The champagne glasses didn't just fall. They exploded against the marble floor like a burst of automatic gunfire ripping through the silence of the penthouse. Darius Knox stood frozen, 60 floors above a Manhattan that glittered like broken promises, his broad shoulders trembling as he clutched the photograph so tightly the edges cut into his palms. In the picture, a man with grease-stained knuckles and a wide, reckless grin threw an arm around a cherry-red 1972 Harley-Davidson that gleamed like fresh blood under the sun. His father, Vincent Knox, gone 3 years now, and still the only man who could make Darius feel 8 years old and worthless with a single look. And tonight, with ink still drying on the contracts, Darius had just signed the papers to buy the very company that had worked his father into the grave. But how does a man betray everything he came from, and then spend his entire fortune trying to buy it back? How does a son run so far from his father's ghost that he ends up standing in the exact spot where that ghost took its last breath? We have to go back, way back, before the corner offices, before the private jets, before the name Darius Knox made boardrooms fall silent. Back to the south side of Chicago, where the air tasted like hot rubber and possibility, and a little boy learned that love sounded like a V-twin engine roaring to life. Darius Knox wasn't born with a silver spoon. He was born with a torque wrench in his hand and the smell of engine oil in his blood. Saturday mornings weren't cartoons and cereal. They were watching his old man, Vincent Knox, elbow deep in a shattered carburetor. Sweat carving rivers down his dark skin while the radio played Marvin Gaye low and mournful. Vincent ran with the Iron Disciples MC, black men on American steel who answered to no one but the road and each other. Mechanics by day, kings by night. Postal workers, transit cops, Vietnam vets with scars deeper than the chrome on their bikes. The world told them the open road wasn't theirs. They answered with thunder. "Boy, you listenin'?" Vincent would growl, voice rough as gravel, eyes fierce with something deeper than anger, something that looked a lot like fear for his son. "A motorcycle ain't just transportation. It's a promise, baby. You maintain it, you respect it, it'll carry you farther than any man on foot ever dreamed. But you neglect it?" He'd pause, wipe his hands on a rag already black with 30 years of labor, and look at Darius like he was staring straight into the future. "It'll leave you broken down on the side of the highway, crying over what you let die." 8-year-old Darius would nod, heart pounding, not understanding yet that his father wasn't talking about engines at all. By 16, Darius had decided the roar of a Harley wasn't freedom. It was a cage. He wanted out of the grease under his nails that never quite washed away, out of a neighborhood where dreams rusted faster than the bikes in the yard, out of a future where your hands stayed dirty and your pockets stayed empty. He studied until his eyes burned, until his mother cried, thanking God for a son who might actually escape. Full ride to Northwestern, MBA from Wharton, that tasted like betrayal on graduation day, VP at Goldman by 32, CEO of Apex Ventures by 35, his own private equity empire built on swallowing companies whole and spitting out profit. He became everything Vincent Knox never had the chance to be. Rich enough that waiters trembled. Powerful enough that senators returned his calls. Respected in rooms where men like his father would have been told to use the service elevator and keep their eyes on the floor. And Vincent? Vincent never stopped bragging. Even when Darius stopped visiting the garage, even when he missed the club cookouts because he was closing 9-figure deals in Dubai, even when he showed up to Christmas dinner in a Brioni suit that cost more than Vincent's house note, looking like a stranger wearing his son's face. "That's my boy," Vincent would say, voice cracking with pride and something that sounded like grief. "Look at him. That's my son right there." Then came the Tuesday that broke the world in half. Darius was in the middle of carving up a pharmaceutical giant, numbers dancing across the screen like beautiful violence. When his phone started vibrating like it was trying to scream, his assistant burst in, face pale. "Mr. Knox, it's the hospital. It's your father." Heart attack. Massive. Instant. Vincent had been pulling another double shift at Titan Motorsports, the little motorcycle plant where he'd been head mechanic for 23 years. The company was dying slow, bleeding jobs, cutting corners, outsourcing soul. Vincent had been trying to hold it together with his bare, bleeding hands. The dream died with him on that cold shop floor. Darius took 3 days off, 3 days to watch his mother collapse into herself at the funeral. 3 days to stand in a cemetery while men in leather vests called him Little Knox through tears, like he was still that skinny kid handing tools. 3 days to feel the weight of a promise he'd never made out loud crushing his chest. At the repast, Rashid, an Iron Disciples elder with gray braids and eyes that had seen too much, pulled him into a corner that smelled like fried chicken and regret. "Your pops was trying to buy Titan," Rashid whispered, voice raw. "Did you know that, Little Knox?" Darius couldn't speak. The words stuck in his throat like broken glass. "Company's been gutted by them white folks up top. Quality gone. Pride gone. Your father was putting together a consortium, club money, whatever he could scrape, wanted to save it, keep it black-owned, keep brothers working. He died the night before the bank meeting." The guilt hit Darius like a freight train. "Why didn't he tell me?" "Because you stopped listening," the silence answered. "Because every time he tried, you looked at your watch and remembered you had somewhere more important to be." 3 months later, Darius stood in the decaying boardroom of Titan Motorsports in Gary, Indiana. The air tasted like rust and broken dreams. Fluorescent lights buzzed like dying insects. On the wall hung ghosts, photographs of the beautiful bikes Titan used to birth. Machines that once made Harley tremble. Now they made cheap knockoff parts for companies that didn't even know Vincent Knox's name. The lawyer slid the papers across the table like a death sentence. 53 employees, plant falling apart, creditors at the door, owners just want out. "Any offer?" Keisha, his CFO, a sister from the Bronx who'd clawed her way up the same way he had, leaned in, voice low and urgent. "Boss, this is a corpse. We'd be buying a grave." She was right. He knew she was right, but his eyes were locked on one photograph, a 1989 Titan Phantom, midnight black, chrome catching light like tears. The exact bike his father used to describe when he thought Darius was asleep, voice soft with a longing he never admitted while awake. "Make the offer," Darius said, voice barely above a whisper. "Darius, make the offer." 6 weeks later, Titan Motorsports belonged to him. The business press laughed, called it a vanity project, a midlife crisis on 2 wheels. Darius didn't read the headlines. He was too busy standing at his father's grave in the pouring rain, suit ruined, tears mixing with the downpour as he made a promise to the mud and the headstone and the God who'd taken too much already. "I'm gonna finish what you started, Pops. I swear on everything I am. I'm gonna make it right." But here's what Darius didn't know, what no one could have warned him about. Buying Titan didn't just mean buying a failing company. It meant buying a war that had been simmering for 20 years, a war of legacies, of blood debts, of old money that hated new power with a rage that burned colder than ice. And at the center of that war waited a man who'd been dreaming of this moment since the night Vincent Knox put him in the hospital with a broken jaw and a lesson he never forgot. Garrett Chamberlain, CEO of Apex Industries, white money, old connections, a smile like a shark. He'd been waiting to bury Titan Motorsports and everyone who ever loved it. And now Darius Knox had just stepped into the crosshairs wearing his father's ghost-like armor that wouldn't stop a bullet. If you're feeling this ache in your chest the way I am, hit that like button, subscribe, turn on notifications. Because what happens next? It's going to break your heart, and then set it on fire. But what happened next shocked everyone. The first brick didn't just come through the window. It screamed through it at 2:47 a.m., a red comet trailing rage, detonating the glass into 1,000 glittering knives that rained down like judgment. Darius was hunched over ledgers in what used to be his father's office, Vincent's ghost still thick in the air, smelling of oil and old spice. When the explosion of sound sent him diving to the floor, heart slamming against his ribs. Breath ragged, a $1 million Brioni suit now glittering with shards that could have opened his throat. Security burst in, weapons drawn, boots crunching glass like bones. "You good, Mr. Knox?" He wasn't good. He was 8 years old again, hiding under a workbench while his father stared down men twice his size, daring them to touch his family. Darius rose slowly, blood singing in his ears, and walked to the jagged hole where the window had been. Cold Indiana night rushed in, carrying the scent of diesel and betrayal. He looked down into the empty parking lot lit sodium orange, but the building itself was bleeding. Across the brick facade, in dripping, furious red, "Go back to Wall Street, boy." The word boy hit harder than the brick ever could. "Pull every camera," Darius whispered, voice trembling with something darker than anger. "Every angle. I want to see their faces when they realize they just declared war." But deep down, in the marrow his father had given him, he already knew. Not the names, the hate. He'd felt it the second he stepped foot back in Gary 3 weeks ago, eyes that slid over him like he was a stranger wearing a dead man's name. He remembered the VFW hall the day after the papers were signed. He'd rented the whole place, paid for food, beer, a DJ. Thought it would feel like a resurrection. Thought they'd see Vincent's blood in his veins and welcome him home. Instead, it felt like a trial. Rashid had stood up slow, arms folded like iron bars, the room holding its breath. "So you really think you can save Titan, Little Knox?" The nickname sliced him open. Little Knox. The boy who used to fall asleep on toolboxes. The boy who ran. "I'm going to," Darius had said, throat raw. "You ever build a bike? Ever bleed into an engine at 3 a.m. because a brother needed his ride for work the next morning? Ever feel the road try to kill you and thank it for the lesson?" Rashid's voice cracked with 30 years of grief. "Your daddy could hear a miss in a cylinder from a block away. What can you hear, Wall Street? The sound of your own bonus?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Darius felt every pair of eyes measuring the distance he'd put between himself and them. Private schools, corner offices, handshakes with men who'd have spat on his father. He wanted to roar that he'd written a $12 million check with his own pen, that he was risking everything he'd bled for, that he woke up every night choking on guilt thick as motor oil. Instead, he swallowed it all and said, "I'm not my father, but I'm here to finish what he started, and if I fail, I'll fail with grease under my nails and his name on my lips." Rashid had stared so long Darius felt judged by God himself, then sat down without another word. The tightrope was strung. The canyon below full of ghosts waiting to see if he'd fall. The sabotage started small, tools misplaced, welds that failed inspection for no reason. A pallet of premium chrome forks vanished overnight, then the OSHA calls. Then the note on his mama's windshield while she sang hymns in the choir loft, "Tell your son to sell before someone gets hurt." Darius saw red so deep the world went black around the edges. He drove straight to the Iron Disciples clubhouse that Saturday, tires screaming, heart a war drum. Walked through the bay like he still belonged there, past the smells of beer, weed, and welding smoke that used to mean home. Conversation died like someone pulled the plug. Rashid didn't even look up from the carb he was rebuilding. "You lost, CEO?" "My mother was threatened." Darius's voice shook with rage and terror in equal measure. "That crosses every line my daddy ever drew." He shoved the phone across the bench. Photo of the note. Rashid's face went stone cold. He looked up, eyes blazing, and turned to the room. "Anybody in this club stupid enough to threaten Miss Evelyn?" Dead silence. Genuine outrage. "Never!" a young brother growled, fists clenched. "We'd die first!" The floor dropped out from under Darius. If not them, then who? Rashid wiped his hands slow like he was cleaning blood. Garrett. Motherfucking. Chamberlain. The name landed like a grenade. Rashid told the story in the back office, voice low, the way men speak of old wars. How Garrett's daddy, Preston, had once called the state police on a charity ride for sickle cell because monkeys don't belong on Harleys. How Vincent had damn near killed Preston in a diner parking lot when the old man spat on the club's colors. How the grudge got inherited like a blood disease when Garrett took the throne at Apex Industries. Bigger, richer, crueler. "He's been waiting for Titan to flatline," Rashid said, eyes ancient with hate. "Wants the patents, the tooling, the name. Wants to bury it so deep no black hand ever touches American iron again. You just stole his corpse, little Knox, and Garrett Chamberlain don't lose gracefully." Darius felt the anger settle into something pure and icy. "Then we make sure he loses ugly." Rashid studied him, really studied him, for the first time since the funeral. "You want this, nephew? Then stop acting like the man who signs the checks. Start acting like the man whose daddy taught him how to fight for what's his. Get your hands dirty. Earn these colors the hard way, or walk away now and spare us all the heartbreak." Darius extended his hand, grease already waiting under his own nails like it had never left. "Deal." They clasped forearms the old way, warrior to warrior, and for one heartbeat the room felt like it used to when Vincent was alive. If you're holding your breath with me right now, feeling that fire in your chest for a son trying to crawl back to his father across 20 years of distance, do me a favor. Smash that like button, subscribe, ring the bell, because this story's about to burn the whole damn screen down. Neither of them saw the next move coming. Neither of them knew Garrett Chamberlain had stopped playing with suppliers and rumors. 3 nights later, the alarms howled like widows. The Titan plant erupted in orange and black, flames licking the sky, hungry for everything Vincent Knox had ever loved. And someone was still trapped inside. The flames weren't orange. They were the color of fresh blood under a full moon, clawing 60 feet into the Indiana night, turning the sky itself into a screaming wound that could be seen from 3 miles away. Darius was in his high-rise bed, staring at the ceiling, still tasting smoke from the last time he'd let his father down, when his phone lit up like Judgment Day. Keisha's voice shattered the silence, raw animal terror he'd never heard from her before. "Darius! The plant! Oh God, it's burning! Everything's burning!" He didn't remember grabbing keys, didn't remember the drive. Only the speedometer buried past 90, red lights bleeding into streaks, his heart punching so hard against his ribs he thought it might kill him before the fire did. When he got there, hell had already opened its mouth. Fire trucks screamed. Water turned to useless steam. The entire West Wing, his father's wing, was a roaring furnace, black smoke pouring upward like the building was exhaling its dying breath. He left the car running, door open, sprinted through the barricade. A firefighter tried to stop him. Big arms, soot-streaked face. "Sir, stay back! I own this place!" Darius roared, voice cracking with something ancient and feral. "Are my people out? Tell me they're out!" The man's eyes said no. "We've got one unaccounted for—" Darius didn't hear the rest. He was already moving, ducking under the tape, running straight into the mouth of the beast. The heat slapped him like God's open hand, air so hot it scalded his throat, smoke so thick it erased the world. And then he saw him. Rashid, slumped against Vincent's old welding bench, blood pouring from a gash in his temple. leg pinned beneath a collapsed I-beam that glowed cherry red from the flames. For one heartbeat, time stopped. Darius saw his father in Rashid's face, saw every man who'd ever loved him burning alive because he hadn't been fast enough, strong enough, good enough. Then something inside him snapped wide open. He ran into the fire like it was water. "Rashid!" The name tore out of him, half prayer, half war cry. He seized the beam with bare, blistering hands. Skin bubbled, flesh cooked, pain so bright it was almost holy. He lifted, roared, felt tendons tear, felt his soul rip loose from everything soft and safe he'd ever been. The beam moved, just enough. He dragged Rashid free, arms under the older man's shoulders, hauling him through rivers of molten metal and collapsing walls, every breath poison, every step a lifetime of regret burning away. He didn't remember falling out of the building, only the sudden cold night air on his ruined hands, paramedics shouting, Rashid's chest rising under oxygen, and the realization that he had just walked through hell carrying his father's brother on his back. They told him later he'd screamed Rashid's name until his voice gave out. They told him the burns on his palms would scar forever. He didn't care. Rashid lived. That was the only miracle that mattered. 4 days in the hospital, Darius sat beside Rashid's bed wrapped in gauze and rage, watching IVs drip and monitors beep, feeling the ghost of his father sitting in the corner nodding slow approval. The fire marshal's report was clinical. Arson. 3 ignition points. Professional job. Security footage showed a ghost in a maintenance uniform. No face, no prints, no justice. Garrett Chamberlain sent flowers to the hospital with a card that read, "Terrible tragedy. Thinking of you in this difficult time." Darius crushed the card in his bandaged fist until blood seeped through the white. On the 5th day, he walked into Rashid's room carrying the weight of every promise he'd ever broken. Rashid took one look at him and whispered, "You got your daddy's war face on, boy." "I need the club," Darius said, voice raw from smoke and tears he hadn't let fall yet. "All of it. Whatever it takes." Rashid studied him for a long, aching moment. "You sure? Once you put this vest on, blood don't wash out." Darius leaned in until their foreheads almost touched. "He tried to kill you. He tried to erase my father. I'm already covered in blood, Unc. Might as well make it count." Rashid's eyes filled. Tough old man crying like a child, and he reached out, gripped Darius's burned hand without flinching at the pain they both felt. "Then welcome home, little Knox. Let's go finish what Vincent started. If the ache in your throat right now is as real as mine, if you feel the road calling your name the way Darius finally did, do this for me. Hit that like button hard enough to rattle heaven, subscribe, turn on notifications. Because this one's for every son who ever thought he was too late to make his father proud." What happened next became myth in the streets of Gary and Detroit and every back road in between. Darius sold the penthouse, moved into a cramped apartment above the rebuilt plant that still smelled of smoke and new beginnings. Clocked in at 5 a.m. with the first shift, sleeves rolled high, learning to weld, to tune, to bleed alongside men who'd once spat at his shoes. He listened, really listened, turned their ideas into blueprints, their pain into power. The Iron Disciples became more than consultants. They became family again. They designed the signature line together, the Vincent Knox Legacy Series, bikes that growled like thunder and carried the weight of ancestors in every curve of chrome. Pre-orders crashed the website in 48 hours. Black riders from coast to coast put their names on waiting lists that stretched years. Garrett Chamberlain watched his empire crack from the inside. Investors whispered, stock dipped. Then one Tuesday morning, he did the one thing pride wouldn't let him do. He walked into Titan himself, flanked by bodyguards, face twisted with the kind of hate money can't buy. Darius met him in the lobby. No lawyers, no cameras, just 50 factory workers who quietly set down their tools and formed a wall of leather and muscle behind their CEO. Garrett opened his mouth to threaten. Darius spoke first, voice low and lethal and laced with the Southside he'd tried so hard to outrun. "You came here to see if I broke." He stepped closer. "I didn't break. I burned. And from the ashes I built something you will never understand." Closer still. "Every bike that leaves this plant carries my father's name. Every brother who rides one carries his spirit. You tried to murder a dream, Garrett. All you did was wake it up." He was close enough now to smell the fear sweating through Garrett's cologne. "So here's your future. You're going to watch us rise while you fall. You're going to hear our engines in your sleep. And every single day for the rest of your life, you're going to remember the name of the ghetto kid you underestimated." Garrett's mouth opened, closed. His bodyguards shifted, suddenly unsure whose side the room was on. Garrett turned and walked out. The door shut behind him like the closing of a coffin. The factory exploded in cheers so loud the windows shook. 2 years later, Titan turned its first profit. 3 years later, they broke ground in Detroit. 5 years later, Darius graced the cover of every magazine that once mocked him. But the moment that broke him open and put him back together happened on a Sunday when the sky was the exact blue of his father's eyes. The Iron Disciples Annual Memorial Ride. This year they rode for Vincent Knox, and for the first time, Darius wore the patch, full colors, earned in fire and blood and brotherhood. He threw a leg over the restored cherry red 72 Panhead, the same bike from the photograph that started it all. Rashid pulled up beside him on a fresh Legacy Series prototype, grinning through salt and pepper beard, eyes shining with tears he didn't bother hiding. 50 bikes fired up as one. The roar was a prayer. The rumble was forgiveness. They hit the open road, formation tight, colors flying, wind carrying the sound of freedom farther than any boardroom ever could. Darius felt the weight lift, the guilt, the distance, the years of running. For the first time since he was 8 years old, handing tools to a god in grease-stained jeans, he was exactly where he belonged. He tilted his head back, let the wind rip tears from his eyes, and spoke into the thunder only his father could hear. "We did it, Pops. I came home. And I brought the dream with me." Somewhere up ahead, Vincent Knox was waiting at the end of the road, arms open, grinning like the world had finally made sense. "So, tell me, when they try to burn everything your father gave you, when the world says you don't belong on the throne he built, how far would you ride to take it back? Would you walk through fire? Would you trade the suit for the cut? Would you fight until the scars told the story your mouth never could? Drop your truth in the comments, because some wars aren't about winning. They're about remembering who you were before the world taught you to forget. And Darius Knox, he never forgot again.